We're 5 games into Michael Carrick's interim reign as Manchester United manager. 5 games, 4 wins, 1 draw. And no, that geezer still hasn't cut his hair. I'm Kweku Afari, and alongside me to analyse the tactical hallmarks of Carrick's time in charge at Manchester United is the Sun's tactical guru, Dean Scoggins.
Yeah, thanks, mate. 5 games, going for the top 5. I've got 5 points. I could have done 20, if I'm being honest, but who would have thought it? You get the best out of your best player and the team starts to win games.
Genius,
I
right?
mean, yeah. But the way that Carrick's gone about this, and I have mentioned some of these in previous shows, so if you've not seen them, they're all here. Where have you been, by the way? But this is just a great wrap-up of the last few games for United fans to go through and see the evolution already under Michael Carrick. And it centres around him. And the main thing that we brought straight away is those close connections. And so putting Bruno into the number 10 position. Now, let's remind everyone, Ruben Amorim played 3-4-3, if anyone else has forgotten. But that meant that Bruno Fernandes was often in that central midfield role, doing a lot of work. In one of my previous shows, I talked about him having a Steven Gerrard syndrome where he had to run everywhere and do every job, and that meant he wasn't doing that job that Amorim gave him. Now, that was the wrong job, because as we've seen under Michael Carrick, you put him back as the number 10, you put him back as the centre of attention, and then that means the other players can play off him. And I don't just mean playing off him with the ball, and this is what this close connections thing is about, is that what Carrick's principles are getting diamond shapes, not just triangles, diamond shapes, all round the field so that you've always got more than one option to play off. And the reason that Bruno is the centre of attention in that is because he's the one that they follow. So if Bruno goes into this area, then this group of players, Cunha and Burmo, Ahmad, Kobbie Mainoo behind him, Sesk-y when he's come on, they follow Bruno's lead. And therefore, that means if you see Bruno go somewhere, you think, great, I'm going to get the ball off him in a minute. And then the other genius of Bruno Fernandes, we saw this in the Manchester City game, we saw this in the Tottenham game, is that how he disrupts defences and he sees the danger first. So particularly against Man City, he played in between the lines. And then when Man United attracted people over to this little group and Connect 4 group that they had over there, Bruno goes in the space that's behind it. So it's all centred around him. We'll show his stats in the time under Carrick. Absolutely fantastic.
Incredible.
I mean, they've not gone up that much since the Amorim reign, but it just shows 4 wins and a draw. And he's been the best player throughout that time. Everybody else has had their moments, but he's consistently been the best player in that time.
And like you said, it's reflected in the numbers. He leads the Premier League in terms of assists. And is that because of the close connections, where he's playing maybe closer to the front man? He can provide the incisive pass that maybe the other United players can't play.
Yeah, and I think it's exactly that. And it's exactly that they've got this principle, United, of we've been too detached over a long period of time. I'll come back to it a little bit in a minute in the West Ham game where it wasn't quite as good as the other 4. But they were so rigid in that shape before that they became detached. And the distances between players became too large. And Bruno Fernandes is the tactical key in Man United's system, much like I've talked about Bernardo Silva for Man City, Ødegaard for Arsenal. He is the man that glues them all together. So if he's in the centre of it and then he sees the space, he's going to cause those great problems. Now, the West Ham game was a slight issue. Now, we'll show their average position map of their time under Carrick so far, and you'll see a very set shape. And it's keeping together those very, very top attacking players at the top of the field. But against West Ham, I feel a little bit like they over-rotated. There was a little bit, I don't know, too much belief. Is that a little bit unfair? But, you know, Cunha was going and targeting the right again from a more central position. Carrick played Burmo on the left. He naturally wanted to go back into the middle again, which is where he wants to affect the game because he often plays from the right, but he played in the middle. Then you've got Amad Diallo cutting in off the right, and you've got Bruno Fernandes obviously joining the attack. So against West Ham, there were a little bit too many rotations, a little bit less cohesion, which meant for a little bit of a slower game, and they couldn't get those, you know, one-touch passes going. But look, that's being really critical because the flick in the switch from pre-Carrick to now, I mean, we wouldn't have expected them to play as well as they did at West Ham under Amorim, and now we're being critical of that in that game. So that just shows how much it's gone. The shape is great. You know, again, to remind everyone, it's now on paper, a 4-2-3-1 with the rotations coming from the 3 and the 1, but then also they move the man up the left-hand side, Luke Shaw, to make that a 3-4-3 or the 3-2-5 attacking shape that becomes.
You mentioned him there, Luke Shaw, Manchester United's longest-serving player, and he looks like a player reborn under Michael Carrick.
Yeah, and I've called this the Shaw flank redemption. And
my favourite one.
Yeah, and actually, I've got to give credit to somebody who put this in the comments. So, like, we're writing headlines in the comments now. And actually, like, let's just pause there for a second because I've got a little exclusive for you. We have been nominated for a British Press Award, Tactics Award. So, and we've actually been shortlisted. So, and it's about audience engagement. So, thank you to all of the fans, everyone who watches it and comments, likes. If you're not already, please like and subscribe, because that's why we've been nominated for this award, because we're answering questions from you and we're engaged with our audience. So.
And congratulations to Will, and especially you, Dino. This show is nothing without
you're the super sub as well, so thank you very much. Yeah, so Luke Shaw, and thanks for that comment, for that headline. There you go. But yeah, it's been that shape flexibility. And so how they've changed this from Amorim to Carrick is that, and I always use this Tuchel quote, I use it quite a lot, and people who watched the show before will have seen it, is Thomas Tuchel says that a formation is just a framework for the players to play within. And therefore that you can tweak that ever so slightly in different games, but the principles remain the same, and they're comfortable in the shape that they're in. And this is shown through Luke Shaw. So in the Arsenal game, we had him go up the left in the second half, whereas in the first half, he didn't really go. And that contributed to Dorgu's goal and Cunha's goal because he moves into that shape. It's almost an Amorim, dare I say, back three at times, because Diogo Dalot stays and Luke Shaw goes. But what that means is it gives the flexibility for the player on the left-hand side to then go and tuck in. So they are on paper in that 4 at the back, but Luke Shaw has been reading the scenario. He's been given the freedom under Michael Carrick to go into those positions. And look, he's an international footballer, so he's got the intelligence to go and do that job. He's played wing-back, he's played left-back, he's played left centre-back. And at different times in different games, in this shape, it allows that tactical flexibility for him to be the key on the left. I do think they missed Dorgu a little bit in the West Ham game because and Burmo, as I say, I don't think he was as comfortable there. It was almost like the wrong side for him. And in that West Ham game, there were some occasions, and we'll show a little grab of this, where the left side was almost empty. And that's something for them to improve on. And as I mentioned in the previous point, was that the over-rotations of the front 4, which then leaves this big gap in front of Luke Shaw, where, he was having to deal with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Fernandes was drifting over into that right half space, and then, of course, Jarrod Bowen. But, look, Luke Shaw has been a revelation, and it has been a return to the Luke Shaw that we saw for England in the Euros.
He's been absolutely incredible. Another player that's been reborn, and you mentioned his midfield partner in Bruno Fernandes, but Kobbie Mainoo in the heart of Manchester United's midfield. Let's bear in mind, this is a player that was linked with moves away from Old Trafford, and now we find him in conversations about playing for England at the World Cup again.
Yeah, another one back in the England conversation. And I just go back to that press conference from Ruben Amorim where he kept getting asked about Kobbie Mainoo, and he goes like, "Oh, you lot love Kobbie Mainoo." And Samuel Luckhurst, our brilliant Man United reporter at The Sun, was sort of like, well, yeah, he's a young English player and we want to see him on the football field. And, and Amorim didn't get Mainoo. And he didn't get him. Michael Carrick, a central midfield player, he gets Kobbie Mainoo. He knows what he wants from Kobbie Mainoo.
Can I ask you, how can you not understand or get Kobbie Mainoo, a boy who started for England in the final of the Euros and did not look out of place? I don't understand how that situation was allowed to develop, and obviously now we're seeing the best of him under Michael Carrick, who's played in that position.
Yeah, and Kobbie Mainoo has become the personification of everything that was wrong under Ruben Amorim that is correct under Michael Carrick. And, Man United are famous as well for the use of their academy players. They're boys that come through their system. They're incredibly proud of it. I'm not going to quote the record because I'll get it wrong and I don't want to offend them, but it's decades of having academy players in their teams. So it's great to see him back. But the key to it tactically has been the combination pairing with him and Casemiro. And he's benefited from the experience of Casemiro next to him. And under Amorim, it was believed that the two of them couldn't play together because they didn't have the legs to play that system. Now, I get that. I kind of get that criticism. But the thing for me in the Amorim system that they didn't do was get help from either side. So when they've played well under Carrick, and these two have played really well, in the Fulham game and in the Tottenham game, Kobbie Mainoo goes and joins the attack and gets close to Bruno again, gets close to Cunha again, and one of the Man United centre-backs goes in with Casemiro, and they form that little protective, the rest defence that a lot of coaches call it, behind that. So that's allowed Kobbie Mainoo to go. And then in other games, they've gone, no, what we want to do is play counter-attack. So you bring the two of them close together in front of the back four so they can play those little knocks around out. And just to mention something that Harry Maguire said in his recent interview post-game was about how well they've protected the box. And these Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro have been key to that, because if you think about a compact defence where the centre-backs come in narrow against a single striker, sometimes that means that the full-backs get pulled out because teams play with wingers, so the gaps are between the centre-backs and the full-backs either side. And Kobbie Mainoo and Casemiro have filled in the gaps. They did that expertly against Manchester City. They did it really well at Arsenal. And that also is the Steve Holland effect, where he coaches players off the ball as much as on the ball. So hat tip to Steve Holland there as well. But then the one thing that I kind of missed in previous shows, and a couple of people pointed out again in the comments, which is great, it's the rondos. So for those of you who aren't familiar, a rondo is a training drill where there's a circle of players and then a player in the middle who's chasing the ball around. It's often used as a warm-up. We use it in boys coaching to make sure players are using both feet and they're popping the ball around quickly. You can have a really big circle or a really small circle, and at professional level, they do it in the warm-up to get teams going. Man United are doing it in games.
Yeah.
So it's the Kobbie Mainoo rondo that's going on. And we saw an amazing one against Spurs. We saw a fabulous one against Arsenal. The one against Spurs, they had about 6 players in tight. And there are actually 4 Spurs players chasing the ball around the middle. And that's what they're coaching. And then because of these close connections on the field, they're able to just do it. Yeah. Because it's like, well, these are top-class footballers. And as I said, in the Amorim system, when they're really stretched across the field, that becomes a 30, 40-yard pass, which allows defences to just move across and then not be affected. And then we would get into that dreaded horseshoe pattern of teams just keeping the ball. In the rondos, Kobbie Mainoo, one-touch passes, in, out, and away we go, then that is, that's been a key to their success. And look, I really hope he goes to the World Cup. I think he's got a job on his hands to get in the team. But having players in form and moving in the right direction, it's great. It's great to see him back in there.
I don't want to look too far ahead. I want to allow United fans to enjoy this moment that they're in right now. But Casemiro does leave at the end of the season. How difficult will it be for Kobbie Mainoo to maybe adjust playing with a midfielder that has maybe less experience and a different profile to Casemiro? Yeah,
very difficult, and it will be very hard. However, what this has now given, whether it's Michael Carrick in charge or whoever the new manager is, Kobbie Mainoo's got to play. So therefore, now you're doing your recruitment drive. You're not looking for the type of midfielder that perhaps you were looking for under Ruben Amorim. You're looking for the partner for Kobbie Mainoo. That's what you want. And maybe there's 2 to come in. Maybe there's one sort of more utility midfielder, but you want the Casemiro 2.0, if you like, the version of Casemiro that's 10 years younger, who can do the same thing, and you want them to be a partnership. It's Petit and Vieira. That's what you want. You want Scholes and Keane, more to the point, for Man United. You want the players that complement each other and work together. And so stop looking for the answer in midfield to replace him, and now start looking at the recruitment drive to who's going to play with him.
So that's recruitment drive for the upcoming summer. The previous summer, the recruitment drive's been pretty successful. You think about Mbeumo, you think about Cunha and Sesk-y, who, again, he's not starting all the games for Manchester United, but he's come off the bench and made a big effect. Yeah,
and I've been really impressed by him, his attitude as well as his finishing and his movement. And, some players, a big 60, 70 million pound player would have the sulk, There's a certain French international at Tottenham who's had a sulk and he's only there on loan because he's not been used all the time. Sesk-y hasn't sulked. He's come in, and this is the big thing, again, under Michael Carrick to caption the 5 games, the use of the substitutes has been absolutely outstanding. Against Man City, he used his substitutes well, to shore up the game. Against Arsenal, he brings the substitutes on and Cunha scores, and Sesk-y was involved in that as well. Against Tottenham, it was, even though against 10 men, they're looking slightly shaky, and then he brings on and Sesk-y, and Sesk-y's involved in the goal for Bruno Fernandes to get round the outside and score. And then at West Ham, losing 1-0, and he brings on Sesk-y to do it. So absolutely hats off to Carrick again for the use of substitutions. But Sesk-y, one thing that I think has been slightly overlooked in this is his movement. Against Arsenal, it's 4 games he's been involved in under Carrick. He's only played 61 minutes and he scored 2 goals. So if a striker's scoring 2 goals in 61 minutes when he starts, we're all raving about it.
Important goals as well.
Absolutely important goals. And as I say, involved in other goals. Against Arsenal, he made the movement away to drag the defender away, which meant Cunha scored. Perhaps the defender makes a block. And against Spurs, he runs under the ball. He's looking for the header, but it then goes to Bruno Fernandes. He attracts defenders to him. And then, of course, the amazing equaliser that we see there against West Ham, where his movement it's subtle but excellent. And that's what separates the top strikers from the ones who struggle in the area. What he does in this West Ham goal is that he just he almost runs in this little circle in front of the West Ham defenders. And by going in this little circle, he creates that area of space in front of him. And the defenders don't do a lot wrong. You know, they're a bit deep, and Man United have forced them back into the area. But then Sesk-y creates that little circle, and then the finish is absolutely sensational. It reminded me of a Robin van Persie goal that scored against Fulham, which was a similar type of finish. And and that's how good the goal is if we're comparing it to some of the goals that Robin van Persie scored. But one thing, we need to focus on some improvement as well. They didn't play that great against West Ham, Man United, and they need to find an alternative way of playing at times. And Sesk-y's the key to that, because if you play the big number 9, he pins defences, he pins centre-backs. And that means then if you play the number 9, you've got to cross it. So and what they did, they didn't put enough balls in the box against West Ham. Carrick actually referred to it in his interview afterwards. And actually, when Mbeumo was then, who was not doing great on the left, switched to the right, he plays an in-swinging cross, which Sesk-y nearly scored, ball into the box. Bruno Fernandes hit a great cross for Casemiro and it was ruled out for offside. So clearly the half-time instruction was more balls in the area. And if we notice again with that Sesk-y goal, what they've done is they've forced the West Ham defence deep. So the goalkeeper can't come out. And that's clever movement, clever play. Keep playing around the box until you force a team back. And what then the next phase for Man United is then, if we force a defence back into the area, can we get round the outside and cutbacks? Because that's what Arsenal do, that's what City do. You know, Chelsea under Maresca tried that a lot, where you get to a byline and you push the team back and then you've got that open space on the edge of the box to score goals from. So it's evolving, it's positive, and at the moment, Carrick can't really do much wrong. Look, they would have wanted 5 from 5, and you mentioned the attention seeker with the haircut. But if you'd have offered them, you'd have offered them 13 points from 15 with the strikers scoring, the front players doing great, then of course they would have taken it.
I know we're praising Manchester United here, but just a little dose of reality. The first time they drop points under Carrick is their first midweek game. They're fortunate enough to play a game a week where other teams are competing on multiple fronts. That's something they'll maybe have to address in terms of building the squad out for next season.
Yeah, definitely that. And they kind of knew the Sporting group. As much criticism as they've had. As you mentioned, and Mbeumo, Cunha, Sesk-y, players they've bought in. They've done pretty well, but this year they only had to build a squad for 1 game a week, or 38 Prem games plus the Cup. And of course, you get to January and you're out of those Cup competitions. They were never going to expand that squad much more. So yeah, they have got work to do. Definitely got work to do in the summer, because they're going to be in Europe. It looks like they could get in the top 5, so they are going to need extra players in those positions. An extra striker, an extra wide man, definitely central midfield. They need a couple of players back from injury. I should give a hat tip to Lenny Yoro, who came off the bench against West Ham as well and was excellent. And him on the ball will be important next season, because a lot more teams will drop back. And although Maguire went off injured and has been playing excellently, the Yoro is another ball player. So when they go into that 3-2-5 shape and teams are in a low block, which is historically what they've struggled against, often you need your centre-back to be one playing those incisive passes. And what's been better under Carrick has been those vertical passes from the defence and midfield into the strikers. And that's going to be really important. So when they're doing their recruitment, the right back is an area to look at. because Darlow does a very good job in different things, but he's not that technical ball-playing right back that they could probably use. So yeah, you're right. There's recruitment to be done.
And Michael Carrick deserves all the credit in the world, but if you look at it and his backroom staff, he's built out a very kind of efficient team that have different roles in terms of helping these group of players achieve results, and they definitely deserve some credit as well.
Yeah, bang on. And Johnny Evans and Evans Elpas, we've called this, because this is highlighted with the set piece against Tottenham, and then there was another one, if you didn't notice, against West Ham. So Evans has come in, he's definitely helping defensively alongside Jonathan Woodgate, and they've done a very, very good job there. You can see that, the way they've defended the area better. And Maguire, again, to use that Maguire interview as an example, he said, we've been more aggressive at defending our box, and that's a Johnny Evans trait from being a very good defender. But yeah, the set piece against Tottenham, Kobbie Mainoo runs across, Tottenham don't see it. Tottenham have 10 men, so they knew that there was an area on the edge of the box that will probably be unmarked because they forced everybody into the box. Bruno's ball to the front post, Kobbie Mainoo, obviously those two involved, and then the ball round the corner for another star, Bryan Mbeumo. And there was a great picture of Carrick sort of smiling and thumbs up to the bench, which was to Johnny Evans. And then in the West Ham game, they nearly scored another, and it was Luke Shaw, and they do a block trick, United, around the 6-yard area, Arsenal-style block around the 6-yard box. And Luke Shaw makes this little looped run round the outside, and Bruno finds him. And again, that was a Johnny Evans way of playing. So yeah, they've defended the box better. Maguire and Martinez have been better as a two, and they're adding set pieces to it now. I'd like to see more long shots from them, because that's an area where they did against Spurs, and Vicario made some good saves from distance. They didn't have as many against West Ham because it was more of a low block shape. But there's more to come from this Man United team. Now they've got that Carrick foundation. They're feeling confident. They've got 10 days off. Obviously they'd want to be in the FA Cup, but they've got more time to work on it before the Premier League restarts. And as you say, Man United fans have got every reason to be optimistic over the next few months.